Now Bharat understood everything and realized the enormity of the harm wrought by his mother. Overwhelmed by grief and anger, he could not control himself. At the thought of what she had done and the eternal infamy she had incurred, his grief grew wild and he hurled cruel words at her. "What have you done? Did you ever hope to make me accept the kingdom? Deprived of such a father and such a brother, am I likely to care for power? And causing the death of the king and the banishment of Ram, you ask me to take their place and rule the land? This is like pouring oil into the fire of my grief. Oh, how unfortunate was my father to have chosen you for a wife. Kausalya and Sumitra will also die of grief. Oh, how could you bring yourself to do this to Ram, who was so devoted to you? Revered mother Kausalya treated you like her own blood sister. How could you think of plotting against her beloved son? And did you not know how much I loved Ram? Greed destroyed your understanding. How else could you so foolishly plan for my happiness? Even the great king relied on Ram and Lakshman. How could you believe that in their absence I could rule the kingdom? And even if I could, would I agree? Never will your wish be fulfilled through my cooperation. I can no longer regard you as my mother. I cut myself off from all relation with you and decline to regard you as my mother. How could you ever think of setting aside rule and custom and getting a younger son crowned? Would not the world revile us for all time? The general law of kings and the tradition of our family cannot be violated. I will not carry out your wish. I shall go to the forest and bring Ram back. I shall set the crown on his head and rejoice in being his loyal servant. Banish Ram indeed. It is you that ought to be banished, cruel woman, who have forsaken the path of morality. So far as you are concerned, you may take it that I am dead, for I would rather be dead than be the son of a murderess. You are not the daughter of the good King Asvapati. You are a demoness. To what hell should you go? You who banished the only child of Mother Kausalya. What punishment would be too great for the grief you have caused her? I shall do the funeral ceremonies. I shall go to the forest, fall at the feet of Ram, and bring him to his kingdom. And then, to cleanse myself of the sin and the shame you have brought on me, I shall lead the life of an ascetic in the Dandak forest. What a flood of sorrow you have caused! By what penitence, by what self-mortification can you redeem yourself? I shall go myself at once to Ram and get rid of my guilt by restoring the kingdom to him. Bharat, finding no relief for his anguish by angry words, sighing like a young elephant newly captured, hot tears falling from his eyes, he felt he could bear no longer the sight of his mother. So he rushed to Kausalya's apartment to find a better place to give vent to his sorrow. Thus did Kaikeyi's castle in the air go up in smoke. She lay down on the floor and wept. Soon the news of Bharat's arrival spread throughout the palace. Kausalya, still laboring under her grief, heard this and was glad, and told Sumitra, "Come, let us go and meet Bharat." Hardly had they taken a couple of steps when they saw Bharat himself rushing wildly towards them to plead for mercy. Kausalya's first thought when she heard of Bharat's arrival was that he had hastened back to assume the fortune which had come to him. Had not the elders and ministers, led by Vasishta, decided to send for Bharat so that he might perform his father's funeral rites and be crowned king? Hence, seeing Bharat, Kausalya, her heart desolate with the loss of husband and son, said in a low voice, "Bharat, the kingship is waiting secured for your sake by Kaikeyi. You need not fear any hindrance from us. Take it, and may all happiness be yours. Only one boon I crave of you, to let me join your father on the funeral pyre." These words were like stinging poison in Bharat's ears. He fell at her feet and clung to them, unable to speak. Kausalya said again, "Oh, Bharat, at least take me where Ram is, in the forest." Unable to bear all these piteous words of Kausalya, and unable to speak, Bharat fell unconscious. After a while he sat up and said, "Mother, why do you thus torture me, who am innocent? You know I was far away and knew nothing of the wicked things going on here. Do you not know the love I bear for Ram? Would I ever do such a thing to him? May all the sins of the world descend on me if I had the least notion of the evil brewing here. I had nothing to do with it, and I have no desire to reap its fruit." He raised his hands and recited all the horrible sins that one could commit, and invoked on himself the punishments due to them if he had any part in the plot. His passionate sincerity convinced Kausalya of the injustice of her suspicions, and her heart went out to him. Tenderly she raised him from the ground and took his head on her lap, and caressed him as though he were Ram himself. She said, "My dear son, my grief is doubled by seeing the pain raging in your innocent heart. Oh, what shall we do, child? We are the playthings of fate. May the reward of goodness come to you in this world and the next." Kausalya had not believed Bharat privy to the plot, but she feared that he would condone it and yield to the temptation of its results. But now she was convinced that Bharat's heart was completely free from stain. Though her own son had gone to the forest, she was pleased that such another son had come to her in his place. The funeral ceremonies of the dead king were duly performed. Vasishta and other learned men and elders offered grave scriptural consolation to Bharat and Satrughan. 14 days after the king's death, the ministers called the assembly and addressed Bharat thus: "The king has gone to the world above. Ram and Lakshman are in the forest. The land is now without a king. It is right that you should assume the rule at our request. The preparations for the coronation are all complete. The citizens and ministers are awaiting your acceptance. This is your kingdom, lawfully descended from your ancestors. It is for you to be anointed and rule righteously over us." Bharat went with folded hands round the materials gathered for the coronation and said in grave tones to the assembled elders, "I do not consider it proper that you should ask me thus to accept the kingdom. According to the custom of our house, the throne belongs to the eldest son. With all respect to you, I have decided to go to the forest and bring Ram back to Ayodhya with Lakshman, and see that Ram is crowned. Please get ready the men and materials for this purpose. Prepare the road for the journey. Let laborers be mobilized for it. It is my final and irrevocable decision not to accept the crown." Listening to the prince's words, the whole assembly was beside itself with joy. They applauded Bharat's suggestion. The army and a big retinue were ready to accompany the prince to the forest. Quickly, an army of workers with their tools went forward to prepare the road. Men who knew the forest, pioneers who could dig wells and canals, builders of rafts and boats, carpenters and engineers worked enthusiastically because they were working toward the goal of getting their beloved Ram back. Culverts were built, trees felled. A broad road for the prince and his retinue was soon laid. Ups and downs were leveled, marshes drained, resting places for the army, facilities for drinking water, and all other conveniences were soon made ready. Though preparations were made for Bharat's journey to the forest, Vasishtha and other ministers formally summoned the assembly again. They did not give up their desire to get Bharat to agree to be crowned. They sent messengers to Bharat's palace and invited him to the hall. They approached him with music playing on many instruments. All this only pained him. He stopped the musicians, sent the messengers back, and told Satrughan, "Why should they still persist in tormenting me when I have refused the kingdom? This is the result of our mother's intrigue. My father has gone to heaven, leaving me to bear all this alone. The land needs a king. Without one it drifts, like a rudderless and derelict ship. We must soon get Ram back." The assembly sat eagerly, looking for the entrance of the blameless prince. He entered the hall. As the full moon rises in the sky, he bowed to the elders and sat down. Vasishtha said, "This kingdom has been given to you by your father and your brother Ram. Accept it and protect us according to ancient custom." Bharat's heart was far away with Ram. Tears fell from his eyes. The young prince wept aloud in the midst of the royal assembly, and in a voice struggling with tears, he addressed words of respectful reproach to the preceptors. "How can you ask one of my race and my upbringing to usurp what belongs to another who is far nobler and more worthy than I? Can any son of Dasarath possibly dream of such iniquity? This kingdom and I, and all else in it, belong to Ram. He is the eldest son, the noblest among us, a lover of ethics. He is the rightful king. He is fit to be sovereign of the three worlds. Standing here, I pay my homage to Ram there in the forest. He is the king, not I." The assembly burst into tears of joy when they heard Bharat speak thus. And Bharat continued, "If I am unable to persuade King Ram to agree, I shall stay there performing penance. It is your duty, O elders, to use every means to bring Ram back. I shall do all I can to make Ram come back to Ayodhya and make him king." He then ordered Sumantra, who was standing near him, to hasten the preparations for going to the forest. The city rejoiced in anticipation of Ram's return, for all felt that nothing could resist the force of Bharat's dutiful love.